drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that showed, as you were, that respectful reading of the Second Amendment tells you a lot about this show. This is a constitutionally oriented show that specializes in individual rights, freedom, the Constitution, firearms, the right to bear arms, the right to free speech, etc. So if that's the kind of stuff you're looking for, man, you are in the right place. But if it's not the kind of stuff you're looking for, you are really in the right place, because it's time you caught up to speed with what's really important. I always start the show off with something called Zemi Ikotni. Zemi Ikotni is my backwards bilingual play on words that translate literally to press the meat. I turned it around and turned it into meet the press. So we started out with meet the press. It was much better, a version of it much better than you would ever see on PMSNBC. The way the feature started was I would read the editorials from both our newspapers, go through them with a blue pencil, find the errors, misusage of the language, theoretical errors, etc. And when I finished, if one editorial was superior to the other, it would receive the coveted blue star. Now, I've been told that if you stood outside the door of the editorial boardroom of the winning editorial, the one that got the blue star, you could hear champagne corks popping. And the careers have been won and lost based on that blue star. Yeah. However, the whole picture has really changed a lot. The Daily News stopped running editorials because it was a Gannett outlet, and apparently Gannett doesn't believe in real editorials. And the Post stopped running editorials, apparently because the way not to offend anyone with an editorial is not to run any editorials at all. So I've noticed, Jose and I think I can speak for Jose, we've noticed that the Post has tilted to the Leon Guerrero administration, and I can only speculate, but I suspect that no bad editorials means no editorials at all. Let's keep batting for the Leon Guerrero administration. So what the Daily News does, even when there's no competition, the Daily News can't win a blue star because they don't put anything in their newspaper that actually resembles a blue star. You'll find softballs, news stories that are recaptioned as editorials, powder puffs and softballs, feel-good editorials, and things that just don't make a whole lot of sense. Today's a good example. Our View, military buildup is underway. Participate in the 2022 Guam Industry Forum. So here we have a news story that's basically recast as an editorial. While the military buildup and the relocation of U.S. Marine forces to Guam move forward, so too must the local community. The construction of Marine Corps Base Camp Bloss makes progress daily as millions of dollars are being awarded for various military projects throughout the Pacific. Missile defense systems for Guam and the region are openly discussed, and international news media continue to report on the increasingly frequent military threats from China and North Korea. In front of these threats and events, it's clear that the military buildup is going to happen. And Guam's people, business and industry leaders, must find ways to ensure buildup activity includes as much of the local community as possible. don't ever expect a newspaper that has editorials to do that. That wouldn't be part of their job. Next month, the 2022 Guam Industry Forum will take place in Tumum. This event will be a vital networking link that will bring together local and regional leaders, contracting and architectural professionals, along with various business stakeholders to bring participants up to speed on the $11 billion in projects and environments that will be occurring over the next 5 years. President and CEO of DZSP 21, LLC, a certain Charles B. Hazard III. When I was asked if I knew what Charles was going to talk about, I said, I can't hazard a guess. Where is it? Where's that rim shot, Jose? Is that broken too?
Not hearing that? Could be. Let's go again.
I'm just barely hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you there? Yeah, that's better. Hazard, who is also the president of the Guam Post of the Society of American Engineers, stated, I think it's American Military Engineers, but that's all right. That would be a blue pencil. Stated in a news release issued by event organizers that, quote, as Guam and the region foresees receiving around $1.2 billion to $2 billion annually toward military construction and development, we believe that this forum is a great way for the military, the government of Guam, and private sector contractors to gain insight about the latest developments and business opportunities. We strongly encourage local and international businesses of all sizes to take advantage of this chance to meet key industry decision makers. It will be well worth the investment. Here's what the Daily News says. We wholeheartedly agree and urge all of Guam's industry-related businesses to participate in the 2022 Guam Industry Forum. As we move forward with the relocation of Marine forces, local participation to ensure the buildup is mutually beneficial as possible will be the key to ensuring the buildup is mutually beneficial as possible. Well, it's a 3-day. I mean, it's 3 whole working days.
You know, the PDN gave themselves rank and they participated as Captain Obvious.
Exactly, yeah. And we'll see what their coverage looks like, you know. All right, so much for that. Today's card, I'm going to pick up something that I should have talked about yesterday. I start out with the travelers, customs versus travelers, and then I go on to senatorial candidates versus senatorial candidates, McNinch versus the Sunshine Law. I might go to Malkin versus the mainstream media, but I'll probably save that until Monday. Then Bloss, that's Frank Bloss versus Jerry Cepeda. And I think I'll probably have a hard time getting through all of that today. So let me talk about the customs versus travelers. Oh, here's what happened when I came in on Wednesday night. I can't remember how many times I've done it, and every time in the past, the flight attendants hand out this form. You fill it out. When you come in, you go through the line. About once every 15 passengers, they might actually look at your suitcase. They look at your form, they scribble on it with a crayon, and away you go. And you give it to somebody on your way out. That's always the way it had been. When I came in on Wednesday on United, we were very close to touching down and still no form. So I asked for the form. Somebody gets on the PA and says, we don't hand out the forms on the flight anymore. You can get that at a kiosk inside the terminal or online. Now, online on the airplane is really a wonderful convenience, right? So we're on the ground, and sure enough, they've got these little tables spread around in the arrivals area. So we go to a table, and these forms are scattered all over the table, and they're labeled English, Chinese, Russian, Japanese, etc. And what do you suppose is on the table? Russian and Japanese.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all. So I, of course, whipped out my entire Japanese vocabulary, which consists of, oh, gomenasai, watashi wa nihongo wakarimasen, which means, sorry, I don't understand Japanese. And of course, there's no possible way. Now, in addition to that, you remember the size of the old form is about 11 by 8.5 by 11?
Yeah.
Yeah, the new one is about half that size. And it's down to about 6-point type. Now, if I'm outside, I got really good near vision. If I'm outside in the sunlight, I can read 4-point type, which is the size of the font on a package insert in your meds. But in the light in the airport, I couldn't read that 6-point font. So what do you do? So I wrote on the front of the form my name, right? Nothing to declare, and proceeded to the line where you stand for them to check your stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You have to fill out this won't do. You have to fill out the form. There aren't any forms out there. Oh, here's one. Take it over to, can you imagine that?
You're already there.
Yeah.
She wants you to go to another place.
Yeah.
She didn't point you to Rosetta Stone. They could have taught you Japanese by the time you got through there.
Yeah. So, and I wasn't the only one. I don't think anybody was really happy with the way it went. So, you're on the plane for like 8 hours. And you really want to just get through and get the hell out of there and, and stretch your legs.
It makes a lot of sense to fill it out before you land.
It does. And if you're going to change it, don't wait till people get up to the line to say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, you have to fill it out. There are no English forms. Well, here's one. Genius. It's just a pure stroke of genius.
But you know what? You just mentioned something that they should do to mainstream the whole thing. Your name, your address, and there's nothing to declare. That's all.
Yeah.
And if there's something to declare, there's another side to the form.
Exactly. But they want to develop all that statistical data too, And then that was it. And I wouldn't have said anything about this, but they spent all that money building the second or the third floor so that there will be no intermixture of arrivals and departures. It's a sanitation device. Well, we came in on the third floor and we're walking towards the end of the corridor and we're told, sorry, the elevator doesn't operate. You'll have to use the escalator. Why can't we ever do anything right? Yeah, it's and I'm carrying this really heavy suitcase, and the last thing I wanted to do was ride an escalator down. But if you're going to do it, it has to be working all the time. It's out of order, sorry, doesn't do it. And that's me, and that's every tourist that comes in to visit our island. And before they even get out of the airport, they've already got a bad taste in their mouth about Guam. Congratulations, Guam Customs. Congratulations, Guam Airport Authority. I know you have your emblem, but I'm going to sketch a new emblem, maybe if I get around time. It would be a picture of a foot with a pistol positioned over the foot. Because it appears that you insist on shooting yourself with a foot in the foot, even though you got new stuff.
There is a bridge upstate New York called Thousand Island Bridge. On the U.S. side, it goes to Canada. On the U.S. side, they start painting. And by the end of the year, on the other side, they're finished.
Yeah.
They start painting again on the U.S. side. So it's the same thing with Gov Guam. There's a perpetual work to be done,
Exactly.
So nothing will be finished.
Exactly.
They need to employ people.
And then the Golden Gate is the same way. The Golden Gate is there are constantly painters up there painting.
Apparently, bridge paint doesn't last for a year.
So the way the approach at the airport seems to be that we'll let the passengers be our troubleshooters and quality control. So when a passenger tells us something doesn't work, that's how we'll know we have to fix it. Not a constant check, constant maintenance or anything like that, but that was so bad, so bad the way they handle that arrival. Anyhow, I probably should work on something the opposite of a blue star because It's a small thing. And because it is a small thing, there's no excuse for not doing it exactly right. If you want to change the way you do things, you let people know so that they can prepare for it. And there was nothing wrong with the old system where the form was handed out on the plane. That way you had 7.5 hours to fill out the form before you got here. Okay, next item on the card is the Public Utilities Corporation and a little additional reference to Clint. Let me see where my stuff, yeah. Okay, now yesterday I mentioned just at the end of the show story in Wednesday's paper that said power rates going up again. Or excuse me, it said vote today decides power rates, and it warned us that the power rates may be going up because the Public Utilities Commission met on Wednesday. Well, sure enough, on Thursday they had their meeting and the rates increased. And the details as to how much the rates increased are in the story. It's a 22%, as you were, $22 increase in total average for residents using 1,000 kilowatts. So you can kind of take it from there. And the new rate will apply beginning next month and last through January, when PUC will consider the surcharge again. The fuel surcharge, officially known as the Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause, or LEAC, is the portion of power bill that pays for fuel and is a major factor in monthly energy costs. Other costs are also incorporated in the LEAC, but fuel is the largest item by far. Now, as far as the operational costs of the Guam Power Authority, those have remained constant since 2013. In other words, the amount of money that we pay out in salaries, maintenance, etc., has remained constant. The LEAC has been pretty volatile. When the retail price of oil goes up, the LEAC goes up. When it goes down, the LEAC goes down. And it's a good system otherwise, because the price of fuel is so volatile. We couldn't set it once and then forget about it. It would be wrong almost all the time. So it's a good device. The public, the Guam Power Authority petitions the CCU for a rate increase. The CCU goes through it, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities goes through it. They hear testimony from John Beneventi and whoever else is relevant. They then decide, and if they are going to go along with an increase in the LEAC, they adopt a resolution. And then John Beneventi will petition the Public Utilities Commission for a rate increase. The Public Utilities Commission has consultants, administrative law judges, and others on board, and they do a workmanlike of studying the proposed rate increase and grant it, deny it, or modify it. Now, sometimes the CCU and the PUC are severely criticized by the public, and I suspect that that's what's going to happen this time, because they had to raise the price, raise the LEAC significantly over a period of time, and there will be people in the legislature who will say, this is not good for our people. You know, there's already inflation and prices are going up and the people are already having a hard time. Why do we have to raise the power rates? You can expect that kind of criticism, right?
Maybe we can harness that hot air to generate some electricity.
Really. And the answer is that yesterday I talked about the fact that the news report showed that there's a potential problem with cash flow at the Power Authority. They're having a little, the meeting payroll is close. They haven't got to the point where they can't, but cash flow is tight. And they mentioned the same thing about buying more oil, that they have enough, but they don't have much of a margin. So the worst possible thing that could happen to us is if we don't have enough money to buy more oil. That puts us into the Sri Lanka category immediately.
And aren't some of these generators or all of them running on diesel? Isn't there a diesel?
Diesel is oil.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, okay. I don't know how they separate it from the oil that we have in our cars.
Okay, well, they don't use the word diesel correctly, and this confused me for a long time. Gasoline or automobiles burn gasoline. The dynamos and turbines that we have in our power authority plants burn diesel fuel. But the news media have insisted on calling these plants diesel plants, and I'm wondering why in the hell would you run a diesel engine? That's a reciprocating engine, when everybody knows that a turbine is so much more efficient and economical. So when they see diesel, they mean diesel fuel. So diesel fuel is what you burn in a diesel engine. It's not as volatile as gasoline. And once upon a time, it was cheaper. Now it's more expensive. And there are varieties of diesel fuel that you burn in a jet engine also. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about oil. It is a form of petroleum.
Okay, so it's not the same then.
So if we got to the point where we couldn't restock our oil, that means no more power. And what a disaster that would be. That only has to happen, for one day, and we're screwed forever.
And no amount of solar farms on Guam is going to compensate.
Absolutely. Even if we could produce 100% of the power we need with solar power, we still have to buy that oil. And it's amazing because there's a simple diurnal fact that explains that, and that is the sun doesn't shine at night. So at night, we got to do something to generate power because the sun won't do it. Now, the smart guy over there in the Easy Rider chair is saying, well, yeah, batteries, you generate it in the day and store it at night. Well, we're a ways from that level of batteries. And when we get there, they're going to cost a fair amount of money. So I expect it'll be 20 years before we finally say goodbye to diesel fuel, the LEAC, and the whole thing. It's coming. And the good news is that when that Ogadow power plant is online in 2024, it's going to cut our power bills in half. And we're already getting a lot of power from solar. And I think we're supposed to be complete by 2035. So the end is in sight. That we're going to get to the point where power won't be as expensive, and we won't be buying as much oil. But we're not there yet. And to say, well, what we want is solar power because it's more economical, very short-sighted. Ask the folks in Texas how that worked out for them. Ask the folks in Western Europe how it's working out for them now when we have to rely on oil because Russia shut it off. It doesn't work, folks. Okay, now, I also mentioned that Clint needs to be discussed here because I don't remember when it was. It was probably during Clint's first term. But when the LEAC was in the process of going up, Clint said, the only reason that power rates go up, I'll come back to Clint right after a short break here.
Good day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
We're already Pica's best radio station.
And we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pica's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for the point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all the Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So here we go. So I think it was during Clint's first term, he made the statement that the only reason that the power rates go up is because of the CCU and the PUC, and we need to just abolish both of them.
Wrong.
Yeah. So, and then Clint, is also one of these, why are we building a new power plant? We should be converting to solar power immediately. So I would expect Clint to be one of the guys that comes out and said, this is not good for our people. Our people are already having a hard time. We should be using solar power. Let's get rid of the CCU. And I'm going to stand up for the CCU. I'm going to stand up for the PUC also. And that is that the PUC is basically in the bad news business. When power rates go down, that's good. They should go down. How much credit does the PUC get for that? 0. When power rates go up, it's because of the PUC and the CCU. They got to be more efficient. They're just wasting too much money there at GPA, and it's got to stop. So that's why I included Clint here. This is Clint's finale here. Come January, there'll be no more Clint around. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to be sad to see him go. So, so much for that. Let's go next to McNinch versus the Sunshine Law. When the Post fired McNinch and Lee Weber, because they said, instead of running these guys every week, we're going to be more diverse. And we'll find 30 people that come in and write columns. I don't think there are 30 people on this whole island that are capable of writing a decent column. Certainly not by judging from the editorials that appear in the Daily News. They can't seem to find even one. So, in the Post, they can't even find one. So they're going to give it to 30 different people when both Weber was a good columnist and McNinch hung in there. So I've got to criticize McNinch today. And he starts out with an interesting anecdote. He goes on to say, in public leadership, we study the function of power law, and voting is probably the second most common power of citizens. But voting is more abstract and does not require the type of attention that jury service requires. There is proximity to power principle. The closer you are to a person in power, the more you understand just how limited their power really is. From far away, the U.S. president can seem to be all-powerful, but to those close to him, they understand just how limited the office can be, especially under the current incumbent. If you were governor for one day, what would you do? For me, I would give every school child free ice cream. Every school child and president, free ice cream. While I would be governor for just a day, I am also running for the school board and need to keep the kids happy. In fact, why not free ice cream for everyone? I know this may sound like a jest, but every election season, our leaders start acting like Santa Claus. That's Lou S.C. Leon Guerrero, Lou Santa Claus Leon Guerrero, who has an advantage that no other governor ever had. She gets to give away money that came from the national government. And she's done it in such a manner that no one can question her on it. Of course, she's not giving it all away. She's stowing a lot of it in her family bank. McNinch goes on to say, along other lines, if I actually had certain powers, I would make sure open government and Freedom of Information Acts are followed. Now, here's where I really take issue with him. The courts should not be involved. In fact, the judiciary should make enforcing these laws even more simple by making the small claims division process these cases. This is something made known to us by someone who hasn't really done it. And there's nothing simple about our Sunshine Law. Nothing simple at all, especially when you've got lawyers on the other side. You'll recall that Rory Respicio was so creative that he found that when I sent a Sunshine to him asking for some information going back to the gambling scan, Rory came back and said, as much as he'd like to give it to me, he was prohibited by law from giving it to me. Now, that sounds really good out there in the peanut gallery. Oh, yeah, okay, well, if you're prohibited, you can't do it. But if you read the law, there's nothing that prohibits anyone from doing anything in that law. So this was just a smokescreen on Rory's part. The reason he didn't disclose the information was because he had the option. So he had the option. He couldn't be forced to disclose it, but he didn't have to. So the reason that he didn't disclose the information wasn't because it was prohibited. It's because he didn't want to. But given the weak, the so-called media that we have here, they take the answer, oh, he's prohibited, and that's the end of the story. I've never seen a group that was so lacking in curiosity as people who work for the newspapers and the radio stations here on island.
I make these little jokes or quips about the youth congress, but I wonder how many in media went through the youth congress as well. Because I think now that we have a government that exists in a bubble that hasn't gone beyond the real world, and so they just act among themselves and they pat each other on the back and they're silent for each other as well.
And they don't get to the real story. That the first thing that they ask a government official a question, and I'm going to use the same old example again. Director Smucker-Huckowitz, I understand that you are going to develop a market for green cheese here on the island. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Where are you going to get the green cheese? Well, the other side of the moon is made of green cheese, and we're going to harvest it from the other side of the moon and sell it down at the farmer's market. And we expect to make a lot of money doing this, provide a lot of jobs, etc. Oh, well, thank you. That's a really interesting story. I'll put it in tomorrow's paper. And that's it. So when it comes to the Sunshine Law, it's not easy. It's not simple. The last thing you would want to do with it would be to ensconce it in the small claims court, because small claims is not a court of record. Small claims does not allow for such things as pretrial discovery, which oftentimes is very necessary in a sunshine suit. And the losing party in a small claim suit has the right to a de novo appeal to the Supreme Court, meaning they go to the Supreme Court, to the Superior Court and start over again. So it's just not a way to go at all. And the same thing goes with open government. You can see how much compliance there is with the open government when I go through it every day and show how the notices are defective. And how I made known yesterday that the reason that the Civil Service Commission can once again stall on my Mini Hatch Act case is because they didn't send out the notices. So there are two ways to fix this. One, the media has got to get off their butts and treat every violation of the Sunshine Act and of the open government law as something very important to our form of government, and be advocates for transparency and compliance with the law. Sending it to the Small Claims Division would wreck it. That would be the end of it. Okay, McNinch also says a person should be able to walk into court and simply fill out a form on these kinds of items. Well, that would mean that you'd lose every single case. to be frank, the governor, any governor, could have his or her legal counsel review these disputes and lay down the law. The governor should be the one. Now, McNich's got a good idea there. And you would think that every governor would lay the law down to his own administration. I don't want to hear about any disputes about sunshine or open government. If it's a close question, you err on the side of the citizen, and you make it known that that's what you're going to do. As anybody who screws up on the open government or screws up on the sunshine is going to be standing at attention in front of my desk, and it's not going to be fun. That's what the governor ought to be doing. If the governor had an overpowering desire to have counsel on board and have counsel establish an unofficial tribunal, that might work, might not. I don't trust governors, though. I think governors see the open government law and the sunshine law as things that are an obstacle for them to do what they want to do. Now, you remember when the governor first declared a COVID state of, the first thing she did was shut down the open government law.
Very first thing.
The very first thing. And nice of Levin said, that's what you ought to do. You can eliminate a lot of red tape.
Almost 3 years later.
Yeah. And here we are. We're still stuck with the same thing. So, and then McNinch goes on to say stuff that I just don't understand how it got in here. He says a person should be able to walk into court and simply fill out a form on these kinds of items. To be frank, any governor could have his legal counsel review these disputes and lay down the law. The governor should be the one. Well, he could have stopped right there. And then he says, Governor Carl Gutierrez is still the one. Governor Joe Adda was the one also. Governor Calvo was the one. I have to very sincerely, Governor Calvo had an absolute heart for our voters and students at the university. He totally stood up when needed. I don't want to talk about the other governors who are running, Leon Guerrero and Camacho, but I will be pleased for either of them. It's not easy to be governor. You can never make anyone... What's this?
He made the same kind of statement on the air once on the phone. I said, look, just make a decision. I'll tell you, someone is going to be right for Guam, someone's going to be wrong for Guam.
Well, he starts out writing about freedom of information and open government.
Oh.
You know, and then goes into something that's completely off the point.
You're right.
Yeah, dust off the Commonwealth Act and work with, anyhow. Okay, let's see. It's time for 4:45.
Probably about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, yeah, okay. Next, I've got I already did the Civil Service Commission Mini Hatch Act. And let's see here. I have an item on the card here, Frank Bloss Jr. versus Jerry Cepeda. And I'm afraid, yeah, I have it. I have it right here. Frank Bloss Jr. versus Jerry Cepeda. And, okay, before I get into that, let me see who I got on the phone here. Probably somebody I talked to in the main. I handed out some of my little cards in the mainland, so I expect a storm of calls from the mainland here soon. It's Jesse on the Sunshine Act. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey, welcome back, Bob.
Good to be home.
Yeah, nice. I just wanted to, you're saying that the media gels at doing these things. I just wanted to, I hear that a lot from, radio personalities or talk show hosts and people that are like on TV and stuff. You know what I mean? They're saying the media is not doing their job and everything, and I just kind of question that because I'm like, man, aren't you part of the media? Like, you're literally on TV, you're literally on the radio, you're literally talking about what the media is not doing. So I'm just kind of like, and this day of like information where it's pretty much available almost everywhere if you have a telephone, internet. I mean, it's pretty easy to get the word out there. So I just don't know how many people actually rely on print media now. So, this whole notion that the media is like controlling everybody's mind nowadays is just kind of weird to me. You know what I mean?
I do, Jesse.
So I just want to say that. You know what I'm saying?
Good points. And let me respond. As far as the media controlling everybody's minds, that's not here. They're not even controlling their own minds. But in the mainland, it's certainly too. If you read the New York Times, the Washington Post, it's blatant propaganda to control.
They're not even hiding it anymore.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the way that I look at it is like, how, let's say people are, how Trump got banned from Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or people are getting banned from Twitter or whatever. There's still other people that like are supporters of, or even people who post what he talks about like on podcasts or does interviews, phone call interviews or whatever. And in a way, Twitter's not really blocking him because he's still able to get his message out there. I mean, you see some of the videos like 1.5 million, 5 million views. It's been shared like hundreds, thousands of times. And so in a way, it's like, you can't say that media is controlling the narrative when millions of people are literally seeing it, Now, I don't know if they're seeing it in America, if that's just limited to America or, if it's the world, but it's out there. And I'm just, it's just something to look at as we go forward, with this technology and stuff. And I'm just thinking that narrative is kind of getting a little bit overused, you know what I mean?
Well, I know what you mean, but I can't say that I think you're on the right track. Now, going to Donald Trump, okay? Donald Trump was successful because he didn't play the game. And I'll be the first one to tell you that the reason that the guys on the left, the Democrats, hate Donald Trump is because he has a crappy personality. And it's that crappy personality that allows them to say, hey, that's wrong. I don't care what's politically correct. I don't care what's popular. This is what I'm going to tell you. And there are literally millions of people that are craving that. And perhaps a lot of them are not that enamored with Donald Trump, but as the alternatives, he's the only game in town. The media comes along and does every single thing they can to bash Trump. But Trump has been able to turn it around and use it in his favor. That's the mainstream media. Here, the problem is that they're trying to control our minds. They're just not doing their jobs. They lack curiosity. They lack any sense of follow-up or thoroughness. I could use the L word here. If maybe that's the explanation. Maybe it's just too hard to actually act like real reporters because they're just not doing it. They take... the example that I gave you in Rory Respicio, and I can't respond to that because I'm prohibited by law. I spent, I don't know how many emails laying that out clear for the entire media, and nobody touched it. It was much easier for them to say Respicio declined to respond because he said he was prohibited by law, and figuring that that's the end of the story when it was just the beginning of the story.
Right.
Jesse, this is Jose. And if I interject something, if you listened last week, and Bob was the one who's actually maybe this week, Bob sent me an article from the civilbeat.org from Hawaii, a good example of journalism, actually from somebody from Guam, Schnabel or Hofschneider,
Saipan, yeah,
who actually took the time to look at both sides of an issue. This has to do with the Fitzsimonu versus United States U.S. citizenship court case, or unreading of the court case. She actually asked Samoans from America Samoa on what their opinion was and why they do not want the courts to give them automatic citizenship. Here on Guam, we've had so many reports or actually repetitions of the press releases, but we never heard the side of the American Samoan. We've heard it from Simon Sanchez when he called in because his mom was born U.S. national on Samoa, and then she became a citizen here by using the immigration pathway or the immigrant pathway. But we never heard any of that from the media. Simon Sanchez is a big media figure, but nobody asked him about his opinion, and that's the problem.
They go with this, insular cases are racist, the insular cases are bad, we've got to do away with the insular cases. And if you listen to Tall Tales, you know that's just baloney. It's the worst thing that could happen to us.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, when you say media, though, you have to include you guys in that landscape.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that, Jesse. Let me tell you real quick, because the reason why I disagree with that is because I want to say we're talking heads. We're opinionated people. The journalist, the news media is supposed to be objective and give us the news and give us so that we can determine for ourselves what the perspectives are, what perspectives we're going to understand. But for us, we're just here to aggregate the news. We're here to repeat it, to analyze it, and talk about it. We're not the media. We're not investigative journalists, but we seem to be doing the job for them.
Right, but that's what I mean is though you're bringing up the issue though and being objective, and you're the press. You know what I mean? You're reading stuff from the press, and then
you see, Jesse, I don't make any pretense of being objective. I don't make any pretense of saying, listen to me, I'm going to be fair, I'm going to go into both sides, etc. I never say that. I'll tell you exactly, where my head is at, and that's it. And I'm not a journalist. I'm a paid blabbermouth. I get paid to do that every day, and I really like doing it.
So you're So basically, you're more criticizing the work of the journalists, which is they're doing a poor job.
Absolutely.
But that's what I mean is like the column. I guess maybe they don't allow you guys to correct them, or because sometimes I do see that they add like a footnote in the bottom, or this story has been edited to I guess from a previous article or a previous day when it was released and stuff. And I see that on the online. Obviously, you can't do that once it's printed, but again, I guess maybe they just need better journalists, like you're saying. But my whole point is that the media landscape has gotten so wide, and like you could watch Tall Tales even after the show the live show has ended. You can go back and rewatch it, or rewatch or if you have a podcast or something like that. So. And as the American Samoan thing, like when Pete called in and he said Neil Weir was doing a disservice to the Samoans, like, those kind of things, those guys could put that out in the editorials or the local newspapers, you know what I mean? So I don't know if they've ever put it in there or.
When you say they, who do you mean, Jesse?
The media, the people that own the
yeah, they should, and that's exactly the criticism. Yeah. The insular cases is not, and it's not like watching a cow piss on a flat rock. You can't study it for 30 seconds and know all about it. But that's the approach they take. Insular cases are racist. We got to do away with the insular cases. Hooray for Tina Barnes, and they don't take the time to find out what's really going on and finding out there's a complete different approach to that. Then if they were really journalists, they'd print both and let the reader decide, but they don't. It's more like propaganda.
And then that's the problem with a lot of media now. You see it. There's so much bias into, and people are actually openly coming out and saying, yeah, we're biased to this one issue, or and I think people have to recognize. And for the longest time, like I grew up only knowing there was Guam Daily News, like Pacific Daily News. I never knew of Mariana's Variety. I mean, who read that at the time? The most prominent newspaper for the longest time was the PDN for decades. You know what I mean? Through my whole life, and I don't. Who can be objective when there's just that one?
Yeah, you're right, Jesse. I gotta take a break, but
okay. All right.
You raised some really important issues. I'm really glad you called. I just have one more question for you, okay?
Okay.
When are you going to buy your Tailgater T-shirt so we can post your picture on Facebook?
Yeah, I'll put it on the. I'll put that on the wanted list for Santa.
Your to-do list. Okay, good call, Jesse. Thanks a lot for calling. So long.
All right, have a good day.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show,
Still running away.
Kimmy A. Minor, Lico Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Okay, here we go. Next item on the card. I got about 3 minutes to go here. I think maybe what I'll do is just see who's jabbering on Facebook here, and then we'll pick up the next item on the card, which is Jerry Cepeda versus Frank Blas, or actually Frank Blas versus Jerry Cepeda. I notice I got a call coming in here. Probably take it after the break, huh? Okay, so let's see what we got on Facebook. We've got, and by the way, it is Friday, so we got the Lou Leon Guerrero show right after the big halftime show. Here's what Benedoso Tauto says. Like example, the corruption by this administration. We the people know it's occurring, but nobody's prosecuting. Media isn't investigating, except Troy. And let's see, going up a little bit. The mainstream media had been co-opted by Big Pharma and Bill Gates. Bonnie Suba, the caller is wrong. The media is pushing all this crap everywhere. They are being paid by the globalist and elitist. Elon Musk brought out Twitter and immediately fired all the CEOs. Kanye bought Parley, and Trump owns True Social. So they are going to allow First Amendment to rule now. I hope so. You know, it was amazing how these large corporations in the media business acted as though we have a fascist government. They weren't.
They were surrogates for the government.
Exactly. Yeah. So the government didn't own them and control them like in a socialist state, but they did the government's bidding, and like in a fascist state. All right, let's go to the big halftime show, and we'll come back for the Lou Leon Guerrero show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Police think it was murder. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Police near Tulsa, Oklahoma say 8 people were found dead after firefighters put out a house fire in the suburb of Broken Arrow.
This is a shock to Broken Arrow. It's a safe city.
Police spokesman Ethan Hutchins.
Early indications, according to officers on scene, confirm that they are investigating a homicide.
As of now, we do not know what caused the fire, who was inside, their ages, or if there were any survivors. Police are unable to talk about suspects or if there's any suspect at all.
John Abisas with Fox 23 Tulsa. Police don't believe the public is in any immediate danger. Elon Musk agrees to the $44 billion deal to buy Twitter. Just before completing the buyout, he canned the CEO, the CFO, and general counsel. Musk says he is buying the social media company to help humanity and insists it should not become a free-for-all hellscape. A judge must still approve the deal, which may happen Friday. People in a condo tower in Miami Beach are forced to quickly find another place to stay.
Miami Beach officials ordered residents of the oceanfront Port Royale condominium to evacuate immediately after engineers discovered excessive movement of a structural beam in the parking garage. The firm Inspection Engineers, Inc., in a letter to the city, recommended shoring up damaged portions of the concrete beam and said it's working with a shoring expert to obtain the necessary permit.
Fox's Steve Rappaport. In 2021, structural problems caused a nearby condo to collapse, killing 98 people. President Biden visited Syracuse, New York Thursday to celebrate the planned construction of a chip factory.
My objective is to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out. An economy that rewards work, not just wealth. An economy that works for everyone.
And the visit coming just weeks before the midterm elections. America's listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Half a day, I'm Senator Chris Dueñas. We've gone from a viral pandemic to a drug epidemic. It is time to stand up the multi-agency unified law enforcement group to stem the flow of drugs and combat crime with force. Maulik is not just another task force, it is a program focused on stopping the distribution of meth and opioids, as well as placing enough police officers patrolling our streets. It is time to make Guam Maulik again.
Re-elect Senator Chris Dueñas. The fight continues.
I am Chris Dueñas, and I approve this message.
Russia says it could target U.S. commercial satellites if they're used to help Ukraine. Elon Musk's Starlink system was not named, but it has been critical in supporting Ukraine's military. A federal health agency backs an argument for letting kids play video games for extended times.
A new study promoted by the National Institute of Health of more than 2,000 kids ages 9 and 10 showed that those who played video games at least 21 hours out of the week did better controlling impulsive behavior and memorizing information better than non-gamers. The University of Vermont's Department of Psychiatry observed more brain activity in regions associated with attention and memory. They also marked gaming as the differentiating factor, ruling out gender, income, and video viewing. The researchers could not figure out if those who had that brain activity sought out video games, or if the games improved those areas, or if the types of games played a role. Eamon Dignam, Fox News.
The Big Apple wants to take a bite out of its rat population.
Far below the bright lights of Times Square lurks a far less celebrated symbol of New York, the rats. The city has had more than 21,000 rodent complaints so far this year. That's a sharp increase over just a few years ago and a possible indicator of an exploding population. The New York City Council is now debating what they call a rat action plan. It would further restrict trash collection times and create so-called rat mitigation zones across the city. Tom Graham, Fox News.
A school in Maine will be closed Friday after an outbreak of COVID. The Portland Press-Herald reports Cape Elizabeth High School will close so that the custodial staff can carry out a deep cleaning of the building. The school board voted last night against a mask mandate, but highly recommended wearing them in schools deemed to be in an outbreak. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
So it's Tailgater Friday, and as you can see, I'm wearing my Tailgater T-shirt. I'll be wearing it tomorrow, and I would encourage all tailgaters to celebrate Tailgater Day today and tomorrow. Getting out there and flying that tall-tailed flag makes a lot of difference as to the audience we can reach. So if you got a tailgater shirt, flaunt it, wear it. And if you don't have one, no time like the present to buy one. And of course, it's not too early to start thinking about Christmas gifts. Imagine how your friends, relatives, and neighbors, how much they would appreciate having a tailgater T-shirt under the tree at Christmas time. Okay, so much for that. Let's go on to the Lou Leon Guerrero show.
The committee. Good afternoon. My name is Lou Leon Guerrero, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts and comments regarding Bill 195-32. I am aware that there is already federal legislation that addresses the issue at hand, thus making this legislation unnecessary. As I read the bill, what was glaring to me is that you are now walking into the realm of medical practice that is not your area of expertise. By passing this bill, you're saying to me that you are allowing a special interest group to say that you and they know better than the experts in obstetrics, family practice, pediatrics, neonatology, and medicine. By way of this bill, you have taken away the discretion, the responsibility, the acumen, and the judgment of that medical professional who is on the ground experiencing the circumstances and is more equipped to make the decisions. There are medical standards vetted through scientific research and medical knowledge that govern the practice of doctors and guide them in making their decisions. By way of this bill, you have said to our doctors who are well respected and highly regarded in our community, we have no confidence in your ability. This bill not only diminishes the medical profession, but it further carries them to jail by criminalizing them if they refuse to abide by the mandate. By way of this bill, you have affirmed that that doctor to have committed aggravated murder, and for that crime, we will put that doctor in jail for life. And by the way, they will rot in jail because you are not eligible for parole, work release, or educational programs outside the confines of prison. If this bill passes, we as a community, through your representation, will have mandated a government policy that ignores medical expertise and puts not only our doctors, but also our nurses, medical assistants, our physician assistants, and any health professional present at that event, and we're putting them in jail. These health professionals are treasures. They are valuable resources. We are working hard to recruit and retain them, and now we send them a message that they may end up in jail for practicing their profession. I know and truly believe, Senators, that this is not the route you want to travel. This bill is very anti-quality of life because it does not consider the expense that the family will incur as a result of mandating treatment that most likely will not result in a quality of life outcome for the infant. Instead, what this bill does is it will burden the family with enormous medical bills. On the conservative side, if care and treatment is given for a year, that family or the government, if the infant becomes a ward of the territory, will at a minimum pay $273,000 a year just on hospital room charges. This does not include pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and health professional time. So it will be $273,000 plus a year. This means taking away limited resources that could be used by others that may have a better chance of a quality of life. I know that some will say you cannot put a price tag on life and money should not be a factor. But the reality of the situation is the family, the government, does not have the human and economic resource to provide the care that is required to sustain a life that medical science will tell you is not living a quality of life. You struggle daily to meet the challenges of healthcare costs. We saw that with the hospital and health insurance debates that you guys made. And now this bill will further add on to the challenges when it does not have to. Lastly, I would like to make this comment. We all have a greater challenge in our island. The community is more concerned on how we can decrease our unemployment rate of 13.3%. We are very concerned on how we can work together to provide more jobs because our job growth has been stagnant over the last 5 years. We are very concerned about access to health care. We are very concerned that we are not screaming to the federal government to include us in the health insurance exchange so that we can have affordable health care to everyone. We are very concerned about how we can provide affordable housing to many first-time home owners. We are extremely concerned about the rising crimes we see today. People do not feel safe in their homes. Women are scared to go to the grocery stores alone because they fear that they could be robbed in the middle of the day. Employees do not feel safe in their work environment. Domestic violence is on the rise. Sexual assault of minors and rape cases are on the rise. You have in your campaigns pledged to work on these issues. You were all voted to help address these concerns. The issues you ran on were why you are my senators. Most of the voters did not vote for you based on whether you are pro-choice or pro-life. Please, let's get back on track to the more compelling issues at hand that have a greater impact to the quality of life of our people. I ask that when you are considering this bill to seriously consider the negative consequences of this piece of legislation that I have just enumerated. Please talk to as many people as you feel is necessary talk to the experts that can give you factual and objective information. I trust that you will do your due diligence, and I know that you will act in favor of the greater good of our community. And in so doing, you will arrive to the conclusion that this bill should not pass. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So there you have it. That's our governor today. And what this is about is the situation where there is an attempted abortion, and for one reason or another, the abortion does not work, and the baby that was to be aborted is born alive. And Governor Leon Guerrero says, in that case, let the baby die. And the bill that she was testifying against said, if you do that, you've committed a crime. Which seems, if you stop and think about it, how else could it be? If you're a doctor and you see someone who's in a situation that's going to die unless you do something and you do nothing, isn't that the kind of thing that we want to discourage? But of course, Leon Guerrero never met an abortion she didn't like. So here she's gone beyond abortion to infanticide. And if you listen to everything that she says, her point is basically this, that when you're determining who gets to live and who doesn't get to live, someone has to determine the quality of life of the person that you're dealing with. And and then also someone has to do a cost-benefit analysis. So if it costs too much, let them die. Now extrapolate on that. How many old folks, if you applied that rule to old folks, how many people who are old, diabetic, different kinds of maladies, that could live for a couple more years if they had adequate medical care? But if you just said, well, the hell with them, let them die, you could maybe save $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. That's what she's advocating. That's basically what she's saying. If it costs too much, let them die. I just can't get on the right side of that. I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about ethics. I'm talking about being a human being. And I think we're all hardwired, at least in the beginning, to think that we don't want to see people die if they don't have to die, whether they're old, young, infirm, disabled, whatever. We would like to see people live as long as they possibly can. Now, I had a couple of interesting conversations in the mainland, one with a close relative, one with the wife of an old high school friend, a wife of a guy that I've known since I was 4 years old. Yeah. And the conversation drifted to abortion. And they asked me what I thought. And I said, well, abortion is like so many other things. The answer you get depends on where you start. And here's where I start. I start with this question. When is it okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? Could you answer that for me? And I asked both of them. And there's the answer I got back. I think a woman has a right to her own bodily autonomy. I think a woman has a right to choose what she does with her own body. And I said, yeah, okay. What about the proposition? Do you agree with me that it's never okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? Oh, yeah. Then what's your approach? I think women have a right. In other words, you don't have to make sense to be pro-abortion. You don't have to be logical. All you have to do is take a huge swallow of the Kool-Aid, and that'll cure everything. So I even offered, I said, if that's what you think, why not take what I said, and say there are certain circumstances when it's okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human, and then draw the rule. When is it okay? If you can draw a rule, then you got something to talk about. Well, I just think a woman has a right to decide with herself what to do with her own. In other words, and here's Lou, same thing. Because they have no argument, they've got to invent all of this other stuff. Well, it'll cost too much. And the logical fallacy called the appeal to expertise. All the doctors and all the, you're just going to substitute your judgment for them. And it's just so wrong. But how is it that people who have a reasonable degree of intelligence can sign up for it and vote for her? We have to take some of the blame ourselves because she's now the governor of our island. She's the most pro-abortion, probably one of the most pro-abortion public officials in the whole country.
And I wanted to make the whole point that this bill wasn't even about abortion in the sense that there was already an infant.
Yeah.
There was already a human. The one threshold they always talked about, it's not about the woman's body anymore. It's about the born woman's body now.
Exactly.
Where's her autonomy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the baby was born. I suppose it's kind of a warranty case. When the doctor says, yeah, if you want an abortion, I'll give you an abortion. And when I've completed the abortion, your baby will be dead. So then all of a sudden the baby is born alive. A breach of warranty, a breach of promise. Oh, doctor, you promised he'd be dead, and he's alive. You got to do something. Well, yeah, you're right. What are you going to do? I'm not going to do anything. I'll just let the poor kid die. That's really what that testimony was about. And we're going to keep playing that testimony as long as she's the governor. If she is reelected, we're going to keep playing it because it's just awful. It's just horrible to think that a public official can sign up for that kind of a rap. Okay, let me go back to the card here. Next item on the card is Frank Bloss versus Jerry Cepeda. Jerry Cepeda is the compiler of laws. Looks like maybe I got somebody coming up here. Let me check before I launch into the next item. See if I can pick. Hey, it looks like Johnny Utah. Yeah. All the way from Utah, Johnny Utah. What do you got to tell me, Johnny?
Well, I was talking to Jose, but I guess he got me over to you quickly. Hey, it's good to hear your voice again and see you on the radio. I'm glad you're back.
Well, here I am, big as life, twice as ugly, Johnny.
No, hey, and Jose did a bang-up job while you were gone. I don't know if you listened in when he was running your show or not.
When I first got to the mainland, I had industrial-grade insomnia, and I listened up, and he did a really good job, which doesn't surprise me, because Jose, I mentioned yesterday, Jose didn't fill in for me. It's like a relay team. I run fast. I give the baton to Jose. He runs fast too. So that's the way we do it here.
Well, to add on to your point, I was loving what you were saying there. Your post Lou speech, as how you were describing your conversation with your friend from the time when you were 4 years old, and I had a thought, an epiphany while you were saying it. And it's almost like there's two types of people in the world. And it goes back to fight or flight. You either fight or you run. And I think that it almost is that basic. No matter how much you know, how intelligent you are, how uneducated you are, there's a certain brand of person. And I think a lot of it has to do with your belief, your religious beliefs, and the way you were brought up. It doesn't have anything to do with your educational background. It has everything to do with who you are, your integrity, your character, and how you treat other people in your life. And that fight or flight. And I think when it comes down to it, it's about fear, and it's about being able to stand up to that bear or to that mountain lion or that whatever it is that is on that path in front of you that you have to go and conquer, and you're scared to death, and you either suck it up and you do it, or you run. And there's just two types. There's just two types of people in the world. There's the ones that are going to fight, and there's the ones that are going to flight, that run. And I think that comes down to where I think that's a good look into what you're talking about with your friends, where they don't want to confront the monster in the room. They want to run from it, you know, and use excuses. And the fact is that you're killing an innocent human being, and you don't want to confront that reality. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are, Johnny. Good call.
Hey, good to hear your voice. I'm glad you're back on the radio. And tell Jose, you know, hey, I need to talk to Jose because I got booted off. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I have no way of really communicating with him to send him my crazy memes and my links to stories.
Well, why don't you hang on, and you can chat with Jose after I go to Wrigley Field. And after Wrigley Field, we're going to entertain Frenchie, and I hope Melvin Duenas calls back. Melvin, if you're listening.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, good talking to you.
Yes, sir.
We're already Pika's best radio station,
and we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pika's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for the point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all the Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Of a day, I'm Senator Chris Duenas. We've gone from a viral pandemic to a drug epidemic. It is time to stand up the multi-agency unified law enforcement group to stem the flow of drugs and combat crime with force. Maulik is not just another task force, it is a program focused on stopping the distribution of meth and opioids, as well as placing enough police officers patrolling our streets. It is time to make Guam Maulik again.
Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas. The fight continues.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
All your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mixed Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show,
Still running away.
Kimmy A. Minor, Lickle Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
So here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago. We got Frenchie on the line. You know, once upon a time, there was a Major League Baseball team in Montreal. Yeah, the Montreal Expos. So at one time in our history, there was actually French baseball. Those were the days. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Yeah. Welcome back to Guam. Thank God I had one of our friends showed me the picture of your goatee before I switched on YouTube yesterday. If not, I would have had a heart attack, you know.
Well, as I said earlier, here I am, big as life, twice as ugly.
Yeah, you know, the jarhead becomes a hippie. So anyhow, I wanted to call just to talk about the abortion issue. You know, you pointed all the wrong thing that Lou has been doing over the years. Yesterday, I wrote an article on Jungle Watch underlining that and taking to task many of the Catholics on the island for supporting her and trying to pretend they are Catholics. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that you earlier in the program you talk about the diesel price and everything. Interesting story that came out last night when we were sleeping was that we only have 25 days of supply in the United States for diesel. So all the diesel turbine, the diesel trucks, and the diesel railroad machines will suddenly stop in 25 days if the idiots that are running the national government don't find a solution pretty soon. And that brought to mind a conversation we had a few Saturdays back regarding the supplies this winter. Even if we have the money to pay for it, we might not be able to have enough supplies because we'll be in competition with everybody else in the Indo-Pacific area to purchase diesel from Singapore and to keep the electricity going. So there is a lot of issues here that are at stake, and then we know that the alternatives so far are not enough to supply us with the proper amount of electricity. So those were just a couple of things I wanted to touch on, and welcome you back to Guam.
Well, thank you, Frenchie. It's always good to take a trip to the mainland, and every time I go, it reminds me of how much I like living here. It's so good to get back home.
Even if custom doesn't have their thing together, huh?
Well, there is a struggle. You know, you got Milwaukee and Madison, which are hard left, and most of the rest of the state is composed of really decent people.
Yeah.
But it is a struggle, and Wisconsin is purple. It could go either way.
Yeah, I'm watching carefully. The senatorial and the governor's races could be very interesting this year. All right. Well, you enjoy your short weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.
Okay, Frenchie. See you then. Yeah, call Frenchie. So where's Melvin Duenas? Melvin, call in. Now you got an open shot at it now because nobody else is holding and nobody else in the green room.
He's gonna hold off and ponder a little bit what he wants to say because he has a couple of things that he wants to make sure he gets right.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go next then to Frank Bloss Jr. versus Jerry Cepeda. Jerry Cepeda is the compiler of laws. What does that mean, the compiler of laws? The compiler of laws is the public official who takes the public laws that come out of the legislature signed by the government and put them into the Guam Code annotated where they belong. It's a very technical undertaking. It requires someone who really understands not only the law, but something called judicature, the process of the law. And we've had, Jerry has been really good at being the compiler of laws. Before that, we had Serge Kanga. Going way back, it was Charles Troutman. And at that time, the compiler was located in the legislature. I'm happy to say that in the 27th Guam legislature, I voted to move the compiler from the legislature to the judiciary, which is where it is now. The governor at the time, Governor Camacho, vetoed the bill. I had to cross party lines to vote to override the veto, and I did the right thing because we now have a functional compiler of laws. Back in Charlie's day, may he rest in peace, we did not have a functional compiler. Back in those days, you needed blue books and yellow books and orange books, and even then, the only way you could be sure you were up to date on the law was to call him up. But now, you can go online, you can go to the compiler's website, and you can see what the law is as we speak. Laws, rules, regulations, all different kinds of stuff is all there, and it's all done by the compiler. So if there's any single person on this island who really has a handle on all of the law, it's the compiler. Now, you need that background to understand what I'm going to say here as I go through Frank Bloss's bill. It's not a good idea. It's a poorly thought of idea. And as we go through, I'll make the necessary corrections as we go. A commission would be formed to tackle many of the outdated sections of Guam's criminal code, something that hasn't been done in nearly 50 years if a bill that advanced during session of the legislature on Tuesday night becomes law. The last time the local government took a hard look at its criminal code was in 1977, before the Supreme Court was even established. Well, here's what happened. In 1977, the legislature hired a gentleman named Jack Horton. Jack Horton established something called the Law Revision Commission. Jack was the executive director of the Law Revision Commission. The building where Cunliffe and Cook is located right now is where the office of Jack Horton and the Law Revision Commission was located. So they asked Jack to come up with a procedure for revising all of the laws. And Jack said, Jack's idea was that the least political aspect of our laws was the criminal law, so that's where he started. Before we went through that law revision process, we were still using the California Penal Code. And here's how that worked. During the Naval Administration, the admiral was the legislature, executive, and judiciary. The admiral, or excuse me, not the admiral, the military governor, sometimes a captain, would promulgate these rules, and they, in fact, were the criminal law. In 1933, a smart young naval lieutenant said, we can do better than that. So he took California law. And I suspect what he did was he got the books and went through the books and crossed out California and wrote in the word Guam wherever was necessary. Now, there's something that most people don't understand, and that is that certainly in the 1930s and in some states even today, much of the law is not codified. It's common law or code pleading. California adopted something called the Field Codes, F-I-E-L-D, a man's name Field, and codified almost the entire body of law. So it made sense to use the California Code back in 1933. But Horton's idea was that we needed to junk the California Code and come up with our own body of criminal law and criminal procedure. In the law, there are something called model codes. Model codes are put together by very smart people, very accomplished people, and they'll take a look at an area of the law and say, here's the best way we could put this together, and that becomes a model code. So Jack started with the model penal code, the model criminal code, and the model criminal procedure code, and adapted that to our local purposes. So it wasn't the last time that the law was revised. It was the complete change of the law to go from California law to the model penal code. That was enacted in the 13th Guam legislature. There's nothing in the model in our criminal code that is outdated. You know, there are problems with the criminal code and the criminal procedure code. The reason there are problems is because senators jump in without knowing what they're doing and start changing things without having a complete understanding of the law, and they wind up with things that don't work very well. As an example, we started out with our sentencing procedure for most crimes was that there would be a determinate sentence and a person would be eligible for parole when he had completed 2/3 of his sentence. And that makes a whole lot of sense because a person's successful re-entry into the civilian community in a large part depends on parole and his experience in parole. So instead of just turning him loose and saying, going out and doing it, he's got a parole officer. So those people who made the most progress served the shortest time. Those that made the least spent the longest time. And if a person had a 10-year sentence and did the whole 10 years, he's still not wasn't on his own, because he had 3 more years of parole. And if he screwed up during that parole, he comes in and serves 3 more years in prison. But, the demagogues in the legislature said, we shouldn't be letting people out early. Well, if you understand the system, it wasn't letting people out early. It was letting them out on time. We can't be letting people out early. So they changed it from 2/3 to 15% remaining. And these are the kinds of things that we need to take long, hard looks on. Perhaps we need to take a harder look on bail and release on recognizance, et cetera. So the ability to come up with good laws is not something that you ordinarily do in a one-shot approach. The longer you spend working on it ordinarily, the better product you get. So it's a good idea to go back and take a look at the criminal law and criminal procedure, but there's something that's even a more crying need, and I'll explain. There is a body of law called the Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code is one of those model codes that are put out by smart people and has been adopted by all 50 of the states and the District of Columbia, and it's business regulation. In 1973, there were only 2 jurisdictions in the United States that had not adopted the Uniform Commercial Code. One was Guam, the other one was Louisiana. Louisiana, because they were still stuck on the Napoleonic Code, something a holdover from the days of French administration. So we adopted the Uniform Commercial Code, but the Uniform Commercial Code is not static. It keeps changing as these guys in the Model Code Department keep bringing it up to date. We didn't do that. So our Uniform Commercial Code is extremely out of date, and it will require quite an effort to get it up to date. Now, we talk about being business friendly. We're not business friendly when the lawyers for big corporations look at our law and say, yeah, these guys haven't updated the UCC for the last 35 years. I don't know if we want to do business there or not. But I'll bet you dollars to donuts, except for Therese, there isn't anybody in the legislature who knows what I'm talking about. So if you want to have a law revision commission, that's the place to start. It's highly technical. It's not easy. It's not easily understood, but it's absolutely essential to making Guam business friendly.
Does it require law to initiate it?
Yes. Yeah, it is a statute. It's a book about yay thick. Yeah. It does require a law to change it, and no one is interested in it. And the reason is because there's no good politics in it. You stand out, you climb up on the stump and you say, vote for me because I'm going to update the Uniform Commercial Code. And the only response you're going to get out of that is ho-hum. So it's not politically worth it for most politicians to pursue it. And this is the beauty of a law revision commission, because if you construct your commission carefully, when the commission comes out with a product, the prestige of the commission makes it politically worthwhile for senators to go after. A senator can say, we had this blue ribbon commission and they came up with this, and my gosh, I'm going to back it to help our people. But this commission that Frank Bloss designed is not it. And I'll tell you why. Here's the people that are going to be on the commission. 3 appointees from the Chief Justice. 3 appointees from the governor. 3 appointees from the legislature. 3 stray dogs. No, that's not right. The Attorney General. The Executive Director of the Public Defender's Service Corporation. The Chief of Police. The Director of Corrections. The compiler of laws is a non-voting member. The executive director of the Review Commission who shall serve as a non-voting member. These things never work because, well, first of all, you're dealing with a violation of the separation of powers. The court has no business having anybody on a law revision commission. They interpret and apply the laws. They don't get involved in the process of making the laws. This is a legislative undertaking or an executive function, and I'd say it's an executive function, not a legislative function. So, you know, to have this gang of people, none of whom are going to be very interested in doing this, none of whom are going to make any money doing it. To do it right requires an awful lot of hard work and dedication. So you're going to wind up with something, at the beginning there will be a lot of good photo ops. Frank can have his picture taken with all of these monocular, say, yeah, we're gonna fix the law. Frank has said, you know, that some of our laws are outdated, and he cited the law about dueling. Well, we do have a law about dueling on the books. And so it's been on the books for over 100 years. It goes back to the California law. And it says that a person who kills another person in a duel is responsible for that person's wife and children until the children are grown. And when I first ran across that, I said, yeah, we probably ought to repeal that. People don't duel anymore. But of course they do. The mixed martial arts, etc., people get killed in that sometimes. Sometimes they get injured. So maybe it's not such a bad idea. But it's not a criminal law. It's a civil law. So this commission's not going to do anything with that. What they're going to have to do, what anyone who does this is going to have to do, is go through and see how what we have now deviates from the model penal code that Jack Horton put in place in 1977 and figure out if it makes any sense.
So it's not just about getting rid of laws you don't like.
No, it should not be. Yeah. So you're not going to get a very good performance from these people. And as I mentioned earlier, the compiler, and in order to make things like this work, you can't have, you know, a dog from every town, you know, because most of them won't be interested. And the ones who are interested will try to take control of the commission and move it in their direction.
Can't give it to the mayor's council?
You can't give it to the mayor's council. So if you're going to do this, the ideal person to do it is Jerry Cepeda, the compiler, for the reasons that I mentioned. So you ought to give it to her, give her the ability to hire staff to help her to do it, and then appoint a commission that will approve the final product, but not get involved in the construction of this. It's just impossible. Let's see, we got 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 voting members. It's just not going to work. But
that's another branch of government.
It is. But it worked for Frank because he got his earned media out of it right coming up close to the election, and there you go. Now I'll go on to the rest of the article here. Okay, yeah, let's go to Churchill Downs and we'll come back to this.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show,
Still running away.
Kimmy A. Minor, Lickle Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Soldiers. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Okay, so here we are at Churchill Downs, 6 furlongs, and I cross the finish line, wrap up another Tall Tales for today. So here the article goes on to say, it's going to be a lengthy process and discussion, Bloss said. These titles within our Guam Code annotated, for lack of a better term, are antiquated. Some of these go back as far as the 1800s. Well, yeah, like the dueling provision. Now, as far as the criminal code is concerned, and murder has been on the books since the 1800s. Do we want to take it off? This is an attempt at someone to try to sound knowledgeable without knowing what he's really talking about. There have been many piecemeal attempts to fix the criminal code over the years, said Chief Justice Philip Carbolito, and I have seen firsthand my responsibilities on the Supreme Court many shortcomings. I don't know if I want to hear the Chief Justice say that. Those kinds of comments could come back in papers filed by defense attorneys. Upon questioning from Sabina Paris, he said a review of Guam's sentencing laws were at the forefront of the issues for the public. Carbolito said the $250,000 investment was modest for the major undertaking, and the judiciary will take the lead on the potential review, will end up donating much of its resources, along with working after hours to complete the task. Some lawmakers were uncomfortable with the judiciary take the lead, when that branch of government would ultimately be the one to rule on whatever laws were adopted. My sentiments exactly. Senator Mary Camacho questioned the move, given that we generally are under the impression that the judiciary doesn't comment on laws or positions on laws. They merely interpret laws. Carbolito responded that having the judiciary involved in a criminal code review was common in other jurisdictions. It would ultimately be up to the legislature to decide on passing any laws, he added. That sounds good. But you have the Chief Justice who comes out and said, Section 421 is bad, Section 422 is good. Who in the legislature, except maybe another lawyer, is going to stand up and challenge a Chief Justice? Nobody. Carbolito goes on to say, I think we satisfied ourselves internally that we can provide our expertise without necessarily really conflicting ourselves. The Chief Justice would be responsible for appointing the executive director of the commission along with 3 members. Speaker Talahi said she was uncomfortable having the judiciary involved in setting policy for the government of Guam. It's at the heart of the legislative function, of course. Talahi noted that there were some states that did not involve the courts at all. And it was the last time it was done in Guam, only one person was selected to represent the judiciary. She succeeded in amending the bill to add 2 members of the Bar Association to the potential commission. The commission will otherwise be made of, and I told you who that's going to be already. There is currently no money available, etc., in the Gov Guam's fiscal 2023 budget, which will require a $250,000 appropriation. Bloss amended the measure to draw the money from fiscal 2022 excess upon completion of Gov Guam's annual audit. So on. Bill 311 moved to the voting file without objection. Bad news. I guess I was asleep on the switch while I was gone. But I should have gone out and testified. This is not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. Once again, if you want to have a law revision commission, put the compiler in charge. Give her the staff to do the work. Let it be her product that is approved by a commission of interest, a small number of interested, capable people, most of whom, if not all of whom, are going to have to be lawyers. It's that kind of a game. Okay, so much for that. I got a few minutes to go here. I'm going to pick up something that I'm going to spend a lot of time on from now on. It's the analyses that appeared in the Daily News in that centerfold of the different candidates. And I'm going to start out with Tina Rose Munya Barnes and Frank Blas Jr. I think it's really interesting. Okay, starting out with Tina. Age as of November 8, 60. Wow, that's hard for me to get my arms around. Tina is already 60. Yeah. And occupation, Vice Speaker, 36 Guam Legislature. Experience, law offices, Brooks and Klitzkie. Yeah.
Yours?
Uh-huh. Yeah, Tina.
How old was she when she started with you?
Yeah. And she learned a lot. She was a good employee. Yeah, so yeah, Tina worked for Brooks and Klitzkie back in the day, back in the 70s. That's why it's so hard for me to get a handle on the idea that she's 60 years old now. But obviously she's starting right out playing her trump card, because people will read this and say, she worked for Klitzkie? I guess she's got her stuff together, right? So Tina's really a nice person. In fact, that whole Munya family, very nice people. And there's an awkwardness there, because there are a lot of people in public life here on the island where I like the people, I just don't like their politics. And the way the world operates now, guess which one is more important? Yeah. So Tina Rose Munya Barnes pulls out her trump card and lays it on the table during the first trick. Frank Blas Jr., experience. Frank Blas and Associates, Senator, Vice President, Homeland Security Advisor, etc. You know what he didn't include? The fact that he worked for Brooks and Klitzkie at about the same time that Tina did.
Dare he say it was a liability?
Well, Tina's a Democrat and Frank's is a Republican. Does the word cover-up come forward here? So I just thought that was really, really interesting, and they're right next to each other in the paper. Pictures, the whole thing. So Tina goes on to talk about all the public service that she had. And then the next item here, and this is pretty interesting the way they laid it down. What is the first bill you want to pass? In my first term, my focus will be to expand opportunities for our people by increasing the number of good-paying jobs and lowering the cost of housing. Together, we can accomplish that in two ways. First, we'll take full advantage of Guam's bridge to Asia, allowing our island to be a transshipment hub for goods we need and lowering the shipping costs of products on our shelves. Well, this would have been a good place for you to mention the Jones Act. And when I was gone, I read a really good, I don't know if I sent that to you or not, Jose, an article about the Jones Act, pointing out that if we could junk the Jones Act, or at least the part of the Jones Act that says you can only ship intercoastal on ships that are built in the United States, ships built in the United States cost 4 times more than ships built in Korea or other places. So that's an important figure to keep in mind. The second important figure to keep in mind is that, as a general rule, water transportation costs 10% of what land transportation costs. It's much cheaper. So, this article said if we didn't have the Jones Act, we could be shipping things from Chicago to Miami, down the Mississippi, through the Gulf, etc., from New York to New Orleans, etc., save a lot of money. I'm going to come back to this on Monday, but right now I got to bid our president farewell. Yeah, so here we go. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Twitter tug of war is over. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Elon Musk completes his $44 billion deal to buy Twitter and starts by cleaning house in the executive suites.
Musk has already fired Twitter CEO and chief financial officer. He also told advertisers he doesn't want the social media platform to be a free-for-all hellscape. Musk said he's buying the San Francisco company because he believes it's important to the future of civilization to have a common digital town square. Sean Lanchel, Fox News.
A shocking house fire in Oklahoma. Police say that 8 people were found dead in a fire in Broken Arrow after the fire was put out, and that it appears to be murder. A neighbor tells Fox 23 Tulsa.
Kind of horrifying to think about. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's something out of the movies. That doesn't happen in suburbia.
Police spokesman Ethan Hutchins says the scene's complex, a lot of moving parts.
We can say that when officers arrived around 4:05, they found multiple fatalities in this house here near Houston and Elm. And as of now, we're still investigating exactly what happened today.
ATF is helping with that investigation. Phoenix police make an arrest in the break-in of the campaign office of Democratic gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs.
The Hobbs campaign saying things were stolen, but they haven't said what. And police right now aren't saying who the suspect is. Telling reporters an ID and perhaps a motive will be released later. The drama as Fox Phoenix polling in Arizona shows Hobbs, the current Secretary of State, trailing Republican Kari Lake by double digits, less than 2 weeks out from the midterm elections. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And Dow futures sliding 169 points at this hour, suggesting a sell-off at the open. Yesterday, blue chips gained 194 points. America's listening to Fox